Good morning, Title I coordinators. Thank you for joining us for our May webinar. I know that you're all busy wrapping up the school year and getting ready for graduation, so we appreciate you taking this time out of your day. Let me get our presentation pulled up.
There are still some sites that need to be cleaned up.
Don't forget to mute your mic when you join us. Okay, here it is. It's taken some time to think about pulling it up this morning. All right, here we go. So as always, just a couple logistics. If you have any questions or comments, those of you joining us on Teams, feel free to just pop those in the chat or use the raise your hand icon. You can also email them to aaron.suddeth@education.ky.gov and we'll get those answered for you. And as always, the webinar will be recorded and posted on our Title I Documents and Resources webpage. So we'll start with a recap from our April webinar. We had just a few reminders. We talked about school-wide flexibility as well as allowability and approvability of Title I expenditures, which was a really important piece. So if you weren't able to join us for that, I do encourage you to go back and watch that recording whenever you get a chance. Our agenda today, we've got some information about eligible private school children, as well as providing services to private school students attending private schools that are located in another district. That's something very important. We're also going to talk about revising parent and family engagement policies and compacts, and we have an announcement regarding best practices to be recognized at the Continuous Improvement Summit in September. It feels strange to already be talking about September, but they are planning for that. So we'll get started with eligible private school children, and this comes from the non-regulatory guidance. Excuse me, sorry, I've been sick this past week, so I might have some coughing. 34 CFR 262 defines eligible private school children as children who reside in a participating Title I public school attendance area of a local educational agency, regardless of whether the private school they attend is located in the LEA. That's very important. And that's different from other title programs. So the LEA in which the child resides is responsible for providing services to that child. The funds generated for services by these students can cross district geographic boundaries. And the funds, I think I'm getting an echo. Make sure as you join us that you're muted. The funds must be used to provide services to students from the district in which the funds were generated. And as I said a moment ago, this is unique to Title I Part A. So I know that districts have been working to contact their private and non-public schools regarding participation over these last few months. So be sure that you've included private schools located outside your district's geographic boundaries that are being attended by students residing in Title I attendance areas. And we're going to talk a little more about providing services to those students in just a moment. So as I mentioned, the funds must be used to provide services to students who reside in that district, the district where the funds were generated. So we're going to look at a little example of that. So private school A is located in District A, and it has an enrollment of 500 students residing in districts A, B, and C. 55 students from districts A and B generate Title I funds. So we want to figure out who is eligible to receive services from each district that attends this private school. So let's look at District A. They've got 250 students total who attend this private school, and 40 of those students are generating funds. So the funds generated by the 40 students must be used to provide services for the most at-risk students in this pool of 250 students from District A. They don't have to be used for the 40 students that generate them. Just because they generate funds doesn't mean that they are the most at risk or academically or in need of any services. Now, District B, there are 200 students at the private school, and 15 of those students generate funds. That means that the funds generated by those 15 should be used to provide services for the most at risk of this 200 population from District B. Now, if we look at District C, they've only got 50 students attending the school, and none of them generated funds. That means that students from District C in this 50 student pool are not eligible to receive services because nobody in their district had generated them for the private school. The district has a responsibility to contact private schools outside the district if they have a reason to believe that students who reside in a participating Title I public school attendance area attend those schools. The LEA may not be aware of every instance in which a student who resides in a participating public school attendance area attends a private school outside of the district. We do understand that. If a private school has students it believes may be eligible for Title I services because of where they live, the private school should reach out to the district and work on that communication, see if in fact those students are eligible to generate funds. So the district may choose to provide the services themselves when we're talking about a private school that's outside of their geographic boundaries, just like they do for the private schools that are within their boundaries. Or they could maybe work with the district where the private school is located and have them provide the services. We definitely see that happen. So although the LEA in which the child resides is responsible for providing services to the child, it may arrange to have services provided by the LEA where the private school is located and then just reimburse them for those costs. That might be the simpler option. Now, in the event that another district is going to be providing the services, both districts should participate in that consultation meeting. It's really important for both to be at the table for that. Okay, we are going to switch gears and talk about parent and family engagement policies and compacts. So I know right now a lot of people are collecting parent feedback regarding the effectiveness of your parent and family engagement programs, as well as maybe reviewing and revising those policies and compacts. So with that in mind, I want to look at a few things regarding the requirements and how to document meeting these requirements related to these documents. So first, we'll talk about the requirement to evaluate the implementation of the district's policy. And this is from section 1116A2D of the Every Student Succeeds Act. It requires districts conduct, with meaningful involvement of parents and family members, an annual evaluation of the content and effectiveness of the parent and family engagement policy in improving the academic quality of all schools served under this part. And this includes identifying any barriers to greater participation by parents in activities, the needs of parents and family members, what they need to help assist their children in learning. This could include engaging with school personnel and teachers, as well as strategies to support successful school and family interactions. So you're looking at, we had this policy, this is what we used this year. Was it effective? Did we address the issues we wanted to address? So a lot of districts like to utilize surveys when they're gathering parent feedback. There's some things you need to keep in mind when you're using a survey. First of all, make sure that your survey questions are intentional. Sorry about that. So a simple yes or no question such as, did you receive the parent and family engagement policy and/or compact? Those are fine as a system of checks and balances, but they don't provide any insight into what parents think about the policy or the compact or the program. Okay, next we need to ensure that all parents have access to the survey and adequate time to provide responses. So some things to think about. Is the survey in multiple languages if necessary, or could it be translated or interpreted into another language if necessary? Is the survey only available electronically or only shared on social media? This is a big one. You need to remember that you may have families without internet access. You may have parents or guardians who are not on any social media sites. So you might want to consider putting an announcement out regarding the surveys. Maybe let families know that if they need a hard copy version, to reach out and you can send one home with their student or something like that. We want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to provide that feedback. And I think it's easy to just assume, oh, everybody's on this social media site or, checking their email all the time. And that just might not be the case. You can also hand out paper copies of a survey at a parent and family engagement event, kind of the old standard. So in addition to documenting the feedback itself, those survey results, for example, you need to be sure you document how the feedback was incorporated into the program. So some things we might want to see would be invitations for parents to participate in meetings where we're going to look at that feedback and talk about it. Maybe some meeting agendas and minutes where that feedback was analyzed and discussed. We could also see evidence of changes to the policy and or program based on that feedback. So maybe you have the policy in like a Word document and you turn on track changes, and we can see where there's some changes and some comments that have been made based on parent feedback. So first, the district parent and family engagement policy. ESSA 1116A2 does require districts receiving Title I Part A funds develop a written parent and family engagement policy. And this policy needs to be developed jointly and distributed to parents of participating children. What the policy does is establish the district's expectations and objectives for meaningful parent and family involvement. It also describes how the agency will meet the policy requirements that are outlined in that section of ESSA. I'm not going to read through all of the individual requirements, but I do want to draw your attention to the phrase, describe how the agency will meet the policy requirements. We've seen some policies when we're monitoring that merely restate the requirements of ESSA. And if your policy just restates those requirements, it is neither compliant nor effective because it's not talking about how you're going to meet those requirements. So districts, we do encourage you to use our effective district parent and family engagement checklist to ensure that all required information is included in the policy. We ourselves have been using these checklists as we monitor to help us make sure that all the required information is in there. Next is the school parent and family engagement policy. So this is in ESSA section 1116B, and it requires schools receiving Title I funds develop their own written parent and family engagement policy. Now, similar to the district policy, the school policy must be developed jointly and distributed to the parents of participating children, as well as establish the school's expectations and objectives for meaningful parent and family involvement, and again, describe how the school will meet the policy requirements outlined in ESSA 1116C through F. And again, we have that school policy checklist that you can take a look at as well. And the checklist also contains some best practices that a district or school may want to consider to increase the efficacy of their policy. Creating a common policy for all Title I schools. So ESSA 1116B3 does state that if the district has a district level policy that applies to all parents and family members in all schools served by the district, the policy may be amended to meet the school policy requirements. This doesn't mean that the schools just use the district policy based on that district checklist that we talked about. You need to remember that the policy requirements at the district and school levels do differ slightly. For example, at the school level, the policy is required to discuss that annual meeting that the schools need to have each year. There's no such requirement at the district level. So if you were using a district level policy for the schools, that's not going to be in there. So if you're going to create a policy for the schools, you want to be sure to use that school policy checklist. And if you're creating one policy for both the district and the schools to use together, you would want to look at both checklists to make sure that all of the required information is included. Policies should also involve representatives from all Title I schools to participate in the development of that policy if you're going to create a common one that is used for all schools. The schools may wish to further customize the policy based on their individual needs. Something interesting that I heard when I attended the Brewstein and Manasevit Spring Forum earlier this month, there was a session on policies and procedures, and the presenter said the individuals who will be implementing policies and procedures should be involved in their creation. So if you're creating a policy to be used by all schools, then each school does need to be included in that process. And of course, parents from each participating school must be invited to participate as well. Now, there may be instances in which a single identical policy for all schools is not practical. For example, an effective high school policy is probably going to differ quite a bit from an effective elementary school policy. So the district may want to work with the schools by that grade level grouping to create separate policies, or maybe create kind of the framework or skeleton of a policy and then work with the schools individually to customize it to ensure that it meets requirements and is going to be effective for their school. So the key there is going to be following up and working with the schools to ensure that all the required components are included. So as I pointed out, ESSA requires both policies to describe how the requirements will be met rather than just stating that the school or district will be meeting them. So on this chart, I've created some examples of policy requirements and some text that would be considered descriptive, as well as some text that is not very descriptive. So our first requirement, involve parents in jointly developing and agreeing on the policy. So the not descriptive policy would say, the district will involve parents in the development of the policy. A descriptive policy might say something like, parents will have the opportunity to provide feedback on the policy through a survey and 2 policy development meetings. There's no requirement about having 2 meetings or anything. That's just kind of an example that I came up with. The next requirement, to convene an annual meeting to inform parents of the school's participation in Title I Part A and the parents' right to be involved. So not descriptive, we have the school will have 2 parent nights each year. That doesn't tell us what's going to happen at the parent nights. It doesn't ensure that that information is going to be shared. So a more descriptive statement would be a presentation on the Title I Part A program and parents' right to be involved will be shared with parents during open house at the beginning of the school year. That does confirm that the information is being shared as required. Our final requirement to look at, provide parents of participating children timely information about Title I Part A. Not descriptive statement is, the school will inform parents about Title I. But a more descriptive statement is, in addition to the annual meeting, information regarding Title I will be available in the student handbook and on the school's webpage. And as I said, those could vary wildly from school to school based on what works best for them. Those are just examples. The next document is the School Family Compact. This is a requirement of ESSA 1116D. The School Family Compact is a component of the school parent and family engagement policy in terms of where you see it in ESSA. It's within the school policy. So a lot of times we do see these as one document. So, and I said that right here, the compact may be a separate document or included as a section of the policy. The important thing is that it's got all that required information in there. What the compact does is it outlines how parents, the entire school staff, and students share the responsibility for improved student academic achievement and the means by which the school and parents will help build and develop a partnership to help children achieve the state's high standards. And we also have an effective school family compact checklist available on our webpage and in our handbook. So let's talk about compact implementation. Kentucky Department of Education does require that compacts be signed by all involved parties and kept on file at the school as documentation. And this question has come up a couple times this year. Electronic signatures and digital storage are permissible. ESSA 1116D2A, sorry, requires the compact be discussed as it relates to the individual child's achievement during at least one parent-teacher conference at the elementary school level. So if you're serving middle and high schools with Title I, this does not apply to them. It only applies to elementary schools. So we recommend that this discussion occur during the first conference of the year. Introducing the compact and just obtaining the parent signatures during the conference does not meet this requirement. We've seen that some during monitoring where that's just where the parents get the compact and sign it. That's not the same as discussing it as it meets or as it relates to their child's academic needs. So it's important to discuss how each party represented in the compact can meet their responsibilities to increase that student achievement. So a great time to have that introduction to the compact are at the annual meeting at the beginning of the year. When you're sharing information about Title I, go ahead and share the policy, share the compact. An effective form of documentation that for that compact discussion that we've observed in a couple districts during monitoring this year was the use of some conference talking points or checklists that provided teachers with tips on how to incorporate the discussion of the compact into the conference as it relates to each individual student, not simply saying, here's our compact, please sign. For example, some, let's see. Oh, this goes with the how each party can meet their responsibilities. So some compacts might include establish a regular time for homework as a responsibility for parents. If a student is not turning in their homework, then during the conference, the teacher could ask, well, have you established a routine for homework? Let's talk about how you could do that. Let's talk about some steps to ensure that homework is not forgotten. What could the student be doing to make sure that it's not forgotten? That kind of thing. So sharing information with parents, we need to ensure that information about Title I Part A, as well as policies, compacts, things like that, are readily available to parents and families. So as I said on the previous slide, distribute and discuss the policy and compact during that annual meeting at the beginning of the year. That's a perfect time to do that. You might consider creating a Title I page on the district and/or school websites where information and links to relevant documents can be posted. Maybe include the school parent and family engagement policy and compact in whatever type of student or parent handbook they receive at the beginning of the year. You can also briefly revisit the purpose of the Title I program before Title I parent events. If you're having a Title I parent night, just take a couple minutes beforehand to say, thank you for coming. This is a Title I parent night. Just to remind you, here's what Title I means. It allows us to do these things. It doesn't have to be a lengthy presentation or anything. Okay, do we have any questions? I'm going to pull up the email and check there.
Nothing in the chat.
All right, I don't see anything in email either. So if you think of something later, just email that to us and we'll get an answer to you. We have an announcement for the Continuous Improvement Summit. We have a call for best practices to be recognized at that summit. And our best practices and sustainability webpage is open for submission for best practices from schools and districts. And this website is designed to serve as kind of a clearinghouse to promote practices that motivate, engage, provide measurable results in student learning, achievement, as well as school and district processes. Any aspect of a school system that can impact student outcomes through improved instruction or operations can be submitted as a best practice. If you're interested in submitting a best practice, that needs to be done by June 17th. In order for it to be acknowledged at the Continuous Improvement Summit, which is scheduled for September 26th through 27th. And if you need additional information, you can email Natasha Stein. It's just natasha.stein@education.ky.gov. We also included or will include this information in our June newsletter once that becomes available. Our next webinar date is set for Thursday, June 3rd, as always from 10 to 11 Eastern Time. And you can see future dates as well. You might go ahead and put those on your calendar as a reminder. And as a reminder from us, we do value your feedback, and we always want to learn more about what's helpful to you, what you want to see in these monthly webinars or in our newsletters. So any comments, ideas, or questions can be submitted through our optional and anonymous webinar feedback survey. And a link to that survey is available in the most recent Title I newsletter. I will stop sharing my screen now. And I don't think we've had any last, oh, we do have a question here. Okay. Do many schools use agendas for homework reminders? I think so. I feel like we hear a lot about agendas. We do like to talk about them in terms of parent and family engagement. A lot of times people want to purchase agendas with parent and family engagement funds, which isn't something that we really recommend because it's not that engaging two-way participation. So you do need to keep that in mind. But last I checked, I think they do still use agendas if anybody else wants to comment in the chat or chime in or anything. All right. I think that will do it for this month. So thank you all for joining us, and send us any questions if you think of them once we're done here, and we will see you in June. Have a great day.